What's up, team? I know many of you and many of my one-to-one clients suffer from cravings around your cycle, right? What they generally call premenstrual compulsive eating, right? When you generally feel like you want to eat everything and anything under the sun, maybe feel depressed and deflated you're eating it, maybe you just feel full and you can't help yourself just consuming more food than normal, and then you feel like ashamed of yourself for doing it, all right? And don't worry, that's totally normal, all right? There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just a natural part of your cycle, right? And a month-to-month general lifespan. So you'll probably notice about 7 to 10 days out, your cravings start to increase, right? And that's because you go through different stages, right? And what will generally tend to happen, I won't use a green because it doesn't work, is you'll have a rise in progesterone around this period of time and a sharp decrease in estrogen, right? What happens when progesterone increases, it's just a hormone, I can't spell it, progesterone increases that we generally tend to feel more hungry, more dissatisfied with our food than normal, right? And that's because with progesterone, what also it does, it increases a certain hormone called ghrelin, right? And ghrelin is the kind of hunger hormone, all right? We just feel ravenous and want to consume. Okay, so just understand that this is just a biological process that's just happened through nature, all right? And it's there for a specific reason, right? Through pregnancy and getting you ready for that. There's some tips that we can do to manage that, all right? And for sure, not all your cravings are gonna disappear. Fully understanding and respecting that it happens, that it's a part of life, and appreciating it for what it is step number one, right? And not getting too caught up on what you consume on that time, right? Just allow yourself, if it is the case, 7 to 10 days of going through that cycle, right? And for some of you, you may always go through that cycle. Some of you, it may last for a period of time and the effects may decrease or it may increase. Right, what we can do, all right, is when we know 7 to 10 days are out, we can start to plan and prepare for that to happen ahead of time. Now, if you track your cycle, right, and you understand your days in the cycle and where you're at, you can then start to plan for these 7 to 10 days ahead of time, right? That could be like making snacks ahead of time, right? It could be just set in I don't know, Saturday, Sunday ahead of time, making some protein cookies or maybe a healthier alternative to brownies and flapjacks than what you'd pick up at the store, right? Ones which contain healthier ingredients, ones that are maybe more calorie controlled, all right? But still feels like you're kind of getting that craving, yeah? The other option is obviously tracking your food around this time as well and being more self-aware, okay, of the amount you're consuming, right? If you have a certain target to hit, okay, and let's say it's 1,700 calories a day, right? What you can do is start to input ahead of time the food you know you're going to consume, right? Maybe just smaller portions this time, and I'll explain why. Yeah, so maybe you ahead of time on MyFitnessPal, like a week ahead of time, what am I doing? I input all the food I know I'm going to consume. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I maybe leave the snacks. What I'll do is I'll start to work out and I start to appreciate the amount of calories I know I'm going to be consuming ahead of time, or you'll be consuming, because I don't go through the cycle. But what that will do, that will leave you, if you have 1,700 and you're plugging in, I don't know, say 1,250, you've then left yourself 350 calories there, if my maths is right. 450, isn't it? To consume, right? Ahead of time, right? That you know, okay, I've got 450 calories to play with, all right? And maybe it's not so clean, all right? If that's the kind of correct word. Maybe it's not so healthy or doesn't help you towards your goals. But the number one rule of weight loss, okay, is energy balance. Yeah, and that's energy in versus energy out, okay? That's the number one thing that we need to be focusing on, all right? Secondly, beyond that, okay, is protein intake. Okay, because these two are going to play a more important role in your rate of progress than anything else, all right? If we understand these two, generally speaking, and we get a good grasp of one and then two, we're going to be on the right path no matter what generally happens in these 7 to 10 days. So if within this 1250 that we've programmed ahead of time, we've hit our protein intake, okay, and we know the 450 calories that we consume from whatever we want to is going to hit number one, we've got number one, number two covered, which is a pretty good place to be, all right? And therefore it doesn't necessarily matter for that period of time. For some of you it may last 3 or 4 days, some of you maybe a little bit longer. It doesn't necessarily matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Because we're not trying to step on stage, we're not looking to get 6 packs and get, I don't know, like beach ready all year round. It doesn't necessarily matter so much where these 450 calories come from, because we know we've got 250 calories of pretty good food. All right, so that's one thing you can do, is just plan ahead of time and appreciate what you can. Another option what you can do is slightly reduce your food, okay, the week before you know it's going to happen. So if when you track your calories, track your cycle, you know 7 to 10 days where that's going to hit roughly where your cravings are going to start introducing themselves, okay, and start going, hey, I fancy that cookie. What you can do is 2 things. Either slightly reduce your calories a few days before, okay, to offset. So if I'm aiming for 1700, maybe I can go for 1500 for a few days. To know, like maybe 3 days ahead of time, to know that I'm saving myself 200 calories a day, 600 calories in 3 days, that I know I can consume on those 3 or 4 days, that I'm gonna have a little bit of a spike. So you've afforded yourself more calories on those days, okay, cycling your calorie intake, to accommodate the cravings that you have and to be able to fit in everything that you want, all right? The other option, okay, is slightly increasing your calorie intake, like the morning of or the day before, just so you feel a little bit fuller leading into that first day, all right? Psychologically, it puts you in a pretty good space if you feel a little bit fuller leading into it, okay? Another option, like, which works quite well, all right, is understand when the cravings happen. Does it happen in the morning? Does it happen in the evening? And start to understand like the cue, like what you're doing at that time or when the time is, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's like when you wake up right in the morning. Sometimes it is late in the evening. Sometimes it's throughout the day. And then you can start to understand the cue, start to understand like what the action that you're doing. Okay. Then you can start to understand the trigger. Okay. And then you can start to understand the reward you want from it. All right, so if you know that it's going to happen, always happens at 3:30 in the afternoon when you're on a team meeting, right? And when you're at home. If it's happening at 3:30, why don't you? This is just an option. Take that team meeting in your phone, in your headset, okay, where you don't have to see them, and go for a walk at that period of time. Because at that time you could be out for an hour going for a walk, and you won't be near anything at that point, okay, where you're going to lose your control over. All right, you're out for a walk in the sunshine. Maybe it's raining. All right, so you know there's nothing around you to be able to allow yourself to kind of splurge on those calories. All right, so you put yourself in a position that you can only win from because you can't splurge on those calories, right? Another option could be boredom, right? Like maybe it's 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. in the evening, okay? And it happens, generally speaking, at that time, okay? Maybe it's more dominant at that period of time. We could fast maybe up to like we can eat between 12 and 8 p.m. We know that after 8 p.m. we don't consume any food. Okay, then it means that we have to understand and appreciate our hunger cues and what our body's going through, and be a bit more self-aware and have a bit more self-control in that aspect. That we don't eat at 9 p.m. Maybe we brush our teeth at 9 p.m. before our cravings happen, right? Then we brush our teeth. We have the act of cleaning ourselves and getting ready for bed. Therefore, we're less likely to splurge afterwards. All right, there's many other like tips and tricks you can do. You can obviously, like I mentioned before, do all this kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, just understand where you're at, start tracking your cycle, use our tracker if you want to track your weight, okay, and your food intake as such, all right, and start to play around with this and see if this helps you in any way. And as I mentioned, probably just pick one thing for 1 month and see how that feels. The next month, if it works for you, keep doing the same thing. If it hasn't worked for you, maybe try an alternative route, alternative option what I've mentioned. All right. Hope that helps. See you soon.